Hey there, my name's Miranda and I teach you how to paint confidently with watercolors so you can create beautiful art that you're proud of. In today's video, I'm teaching you how to paint an easy watercolor landscape for beginners. So by the time you're done watching this video, you'll know how to paint a dynamic sky, mountains, and a tree using a warm color palette. So without further ado, let's get started. In this watercolor tutorial, I am using paints by the brand Sennelier. They are Sennelier Yellow Light, French Vermilion, Warm Sepia, and Burnt Sienna. I'm also using two brushes by the brand Silver Black Velvet. They are a size 8 round brush and a size 4 round brush. And I'm also using 100% cotton cold press paper by the brand Arches. All of the art supplies I'm using in this tutorial are linked in the description box. Alright, so to begin, you're going to dilute some of the yellow pigment in your mixing well, and you're going to do that also with the red pigment. Then load up your brush with the yellow and apply it directly onto the paper using the wet on dry technique. Apply the yellow pigment on the lower half of the paper. Then load up your brush with the red pigment and apply it to the upper half of the paper. Right now you can see there's a bit of that dry brush texture. That's totally fine because after you apply the pigment, you're going to come in with more water and you're going to start blending the two pigments together so that they create a nice orangey color in the middle of the paper. So right now, you're going to go back in with some more water, and it's totally fine to create these kind of wispy brush strokes in the sky because you're creating a sky that is more dynamic, so it should not be one smooth transition. So load up your brush again with some of the red pigment, and you're going to add more brush strokes into the upper half of the sky. You're going to do the same with the yellow pigment, and what you're going to do is to start blending out both of the pigments because now you're building them up to create more pigmentation. So wait for the layer to dry, then come back in with another layer. You're repeating the exact same technique. As you can see here, you're creating those long wispy strokes. Don't think about it while you're painting, just add them spontaneously wherever your intuition is guiding you. And as you brush back and forth from left to right, you're going to create these nice clouds in the sky that are very whimsical and very loose. Now, red sometimes is a little tricky to get as pigmented as you want, so if the red's not showing up as well as you like, you can just grab some of that pigment directly from the tube or from the pan, depending on what you're using. So add your finishing touches to this layer. If you're enjoying this video, give it a like so that you can help the YouTube algorithm spread this video to more people. Now, rinse off your brush and then load it up with some clean, clear water. Then take your brush and just drag it through some of the parts of the upper half of the sky. And what you're doing is you are using the lifting technique to pick up some of that pigment because some parts should be a little bit lighter to create more variation in the values. So take your brush, rinse off any pigment you pick up, and then go back and do this a few more times to add some more variation back into the sky. And here you can see I'm adding a bit more red pigment yet again, just because I feel like I lost a little bit of the darkness. If that happens to you, then go back and just add a little bit of that pigment back into the painting. Now you're going to mix some of the burnt sienna with the warm sepia to create a really nice shade of brown. You can see here I swatched it on a spare piece of paper just to make sure that I was getting the light brown value, because we're going to paint some mountains in the distance and objects in the distance appear lighter. So load up your brush and then draw the outline of mountains. Make sure that the peaks are of varying heights and it should look very uneven. Now see here, there's a little mountain kind of about 1/3 into the painting. This is going to be important, so make sure you put a little bit of a distinction in the mountain peak here. I'll show you why in just a little bit. Load up your brush one more time and you can now refine the mountain peaks to make it look more organic with the edges. So refine the mountains, and then when you're happy with it, let it dry. Okay, now switch to a round 4 brush and load up your brush with that brown pigment. This time the brown should be darker because you are creating a new layer that is in front of the mountains in the back, and any objects that are closer to the viewer are darker. So see here, I was testing the color yet again because I felt like that brown was not dark enough. So make sure that it is quite a bit darker than that first layer, and then draw a sloping hill. In the foreground here, we're drawing a hill, we are not drawing mountains. So make it uneven, make it a little sloped so that it has more of that organic appearance. Now, remember where I said to pay attention to that smaller mountain peak? Well, at this point, you're going to draw a thin line here, and this represents a tree trunk. Next, you're going to draw some very loose branches coming out from that tree trunk, and you are going to use these branches as a guide for the tree that you're creating. The reason why I told you to pay attention to this smaller mountain is because we're using the rule of thirds to draw your attention to this part of the painting. Now load up your brush with more pigment, and you're going to use quick sporadic dabs to create the leaves on this tree. As you add the dabs, you will create foliage, and this tree will then have a very nice silhouette. Essentially, that's what you're painting right now. So keep adding those dabs, and once you have gotten the silhouette, you could go in and refine it. So here I am making the trunk a little bit thicker, and then I will come in with a little bit more pigment just to add some more dynamism. So drawing tiny little branches within the tree, adding a few sparse leaves, and darkening some of the areas and keeping the other ones lighter so that there is variation in the tonal values. So keep adding color until you're happy with it. And I decided down here that I did not think the foreground layer was dark enough, so I'm just coming in with a little bit of that extra pigment to make it a little darker. And so then the ground actually matches the color of the tree pretty nicely. And it just creates more contrast between the background mountains and the foreground. Now mix up a little bit more color, and the last thing you're going to do is add some visual interest to the painting. So the visual interests are little birds. So essentially you're drawing V shapes in the sky, little V shapes or little X shapes, and these represent birds that are flying. And I am drawing, or I am painting, these birds in the upper kind of middle to right of the painting just to balance out the composition. I put in the painting 7 birds. You can add maybe 1 or 2, you can add more. It's up to you. So draw these little shapes in the sky, little X's and V's. Make sure they are kind of loosely flying in the sky. Alright, now comes the fun part. Carefully tear apart each piece of the tape. Pull in the opposite direction to get a seamless peel. And voila, your painting is complete. Congratulations! And there you have it. Your watercolor painting is complete. So if you enjoyed this tutorial, then the next step is to check out this watercolor tutorial here. It's super fun, and the best part is it's pretty quick and easy to paint. So I'll see you in the next video.